We did a good job of labeling this session. We did a less than stellar job of promoting this session. We're going to talk about raising families, being married in today's generation. There are a few people in this room that are learning that at a slightly older age, but we're not going to be the subject today. On my left is Jason and his wife, Heather, Cordova. And on my other side is Chris and Amanda Burge. Jason and Heather are from Northern California. Jason and Amanda are from here in the Dallas area. Or Chris and Amanda. Well, I'll get them right in a little bit. Them and them.
There you go.
A little background. Chris and Amanda, share a little bit about your family composition, how long you've been married.
Okay. Christopher Burge is my wife, Amanda. We have 4 children together, 16, 14, 11, and 5. 3 girls and 1 boy kind of stuck in the middle there. Our kids are beautiful. They're amazing. They're challenging because they're so self-driven, which is going to make them really great adults. I'm in software. She's, well, you tell them what you do. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm in education dealing with technology specifically.
I'm Jason Cordova. This is my wife, Heather. We've been married 8 years. We were actually high school sweethearts and then went our separate way and found ourselves both at a place where we're single, and one thing led to another. We have 4 kids. We have our 5-year-old son, Jackson, and then we have a 12-year-old, 16-year-old, and 19-year-old daughters. And I am in benefits, so I work with the Native nations, bringing benefits into their employees.
And I have been a litigation paralegal for about 19 years, but currently am doing the stay-at-home mom thing for the first time in 19 years.
All right. We talked together before, but now I'm going to throw them questions I didn't ask them. Jason, Heather, what's the single largest obstacle you have faced in your married life?
Which one?
I said single largest.
Single largest would probably be getting sick, being out of work from it, and having our financials crumble as a family, and your 15-year-old daughter comes to you and says, "Dad, are we going to lose our house?" So those were kind of the struggle that we had gone through that after I'd gotten sick. Was able finally to get back to work, but through all of that, we had issues with our mortgage company, and it's like one thing after another over a 3.5-4 year period where we were dealing with health stuff. So that's been probably one of the biggest issues because it infiltrates your finances, every part of your life.
Chris and Amanda, same question.
I would say for us, it's been finding the healthy balance between 2 working parents and having 4 kids, and what ministry is and what we thought it was and what we've actually found it to be in our life. And then also balancing with everything with taking care of each other as well, and making sure that we don't neglect each other through all of these phases of life that we're cycling through together.
Both families have teenagers. I think this is where God invented fasting and prayer.
I think so too. My mom would tell you that she, for probably 20 years, once a week fasted specifically for me, just because of my hard-headedness and my funness.
What is the, I wouldn't say biggest challenge, biggest opportunity that you face with both your current teenagers and your emerging teenagers?
Our biggest thing is communicating with our kids, having that constant conversation and building that relationship with them, and letting them fail and letting us always constantly be there to pick them up and help them with things and figure things out, and letting them test waters while they're with us and they're in that safe place with us so we can help them walk through them and not protect them so much that when they get out to be an adult, they don't know what to do with anything or process anything. We want to make sure that we are constantly being an open door to them and allowing them to, I didn't have a talking, close relationship with my parents. So it's really important to me that they know that whatever questions or thoughts or concerns you have, that we're both here. They're not one-sided on which parent they're going to choose. So just open communication. If they're not talking to me, then I'm doing something wrong.
I'll add one thing. We do navigate that together because there's times that, she has totally different background from me growing up. And so she has strengths that I don't have, and I do too. And our kids recognize that as well. So we know when to tag in and tag out. And if I'm having a stressful day, if I'm tired, if it's just whatever from work or anything, she has to be sensitive to pick that up. And same for me. So we have to be very in prayer, of course, but very sensitive in the natural too, to just pick up signs and go, okay, this teenage issue we're dealing with is a little too much for Amanda right now, so I'm going to step in. So it's a balancing act, but that has been a challenge as well, but it's incredibly rewarding. I've always told people the small amount that I've invested in my kids, whether it be spiritual or just in the natural, it's amazing what God does with just the littlest things you can do. He produces so much fruit. They're incredible kids. I feel like that's not all credit to us. I feel like God has done an incredible work with us teaching them small things like loving each other, being open, learning, failing, getting back up. So.
Yeah. And it's also humbling because you're going to share information with them, and I mentioned this yesterday, it doesn't look like they're listening. But they are. And they may go out and make a few mistakes in the meantime, but they always come back. And as long as we're that safe spot to land, that's what matters more to us than anything else. And so we work really, really hard at that at our house.
Jason, Heather, you have a blended family, and you have a blended set of teenagers. What kind of challenges do you face? Because every child's different.
What challenge don't we face? From 12 to 17, we've kind of labeled the girls the infection because something takes over their body that you don't know who they are. They're not the sweet little girls they were. And it's hard, but I can say with having our 19-year-old, we must have done something right because she has calmed down. She's very respectful. She gets on her little sisters for being disrespectful to us now. So it's a balancing act, and we've definitely had to go through learning how to communicate, learning not to pick sides, and things like that. So it's been interesting.
For me, I think one of the hardest things was adjusting to is my daughter, Annalise, comes only a couple times a year. So when she comes, I would try to devote all my time to her. Well, the other girls start to see that, and they're wanting your attention also. And so you're trying to balance your relationship with one daughter that's coming in with your kids that live there, because your one daughter that's coming in is like, Dad, you love Hannah more than me. And so you're trying to break those barriers to let them know, no, my love for you is great, and explain that to them. And walking through, I think all three girls are very opinionated and strong-willed, but they function differently. Hannah will tell you to fly a kite without an issue. Annalise is sharp and smart and quiet and processes. So her response is a little bit different. And then Natalie, she's a mix between them two, that she will let you know how to fly the kite, and then she will also sit there and process and deviate. How do I fix this? Or how do I get somebody back? An example would be last summer, her and Natalie and Annalise were walking. Natalie's our 12-year-old, Annalise 16. And Annalise had hit Natalie with a stick. They were playing around, and Natalie says, "Oh, it's okay, I'll get you back." Well, you would think that it'd be in the next 15, 20 minutes. Natalie waits till 2 o'clock in the morning, and all of a sudden you have one girl screaming because the other sister is dumping dish soap in her hair. And not just drop by drop, letting it build up. So trying to balance that act of how you treat them and instill in them the love for each other. Yes, they love each other. They're brothers and sisters, so they get after each other. But dealing with the personalities has been a little hard, especially for me, because I'm such a take it or leave it type guy. And so that's really, it's had to break me down on how I receive from them. And even to like, two of my daughters called me DJ for Daddy Jason. And I hated it. Absolutely hated it. I'm not DJ Tanner from Full House. Okay, that's what I would think. But then I begin to realize is they're calling me a name to them that stands to them and knows who I am, and having to be able to accept that regardless of how I feel.
Chris and Amanda, now that you have children that are in that teenage year, how much different is life for them than life was when you were that age?
Personally or generally?
Well, you got 4 kids and we got about 40 minutes.
Well, I'm not going to go that deep. Well, for me, it was really hard with our oldest, Reagan, is 16. It was really hard for me when she turned 16 because I was parenting past the point of when I was parented, because I haven't lived with my parents since I was 16. And so, honestly, I'm really proud of us for just still being there. I mean, I feel like sometimes when you see things happen in your life, you don't mean to, but you cause them to happen in your own life. And I mean, we love our kids. We choose our kids all the time. Like over everything else, that's what we choose. And so their lives are completely different in the sense that they have 2 stable parents who love them, who want them, who are invested in everything they do. I think the biggest thing in general for all of our kids is that, even when, we were 80s and 90s kids, and we did silly stuff just like every other generation, but our kids deal with the social media aspect. Everything's online. You're scared everything's not going to be a secret. Your friend gets mad at you one day, and then everything's online. Everybody knows about it. And it's terrifying to be a kid right now. And so it does open so many opportunities for them, but you have to be so much more guarded as a parent to keep them safe and to help them make those choices. And how do we treat other people? How do we expect to be treated? When do we have boundaries? We talk a lot about boundaries, like when they've had an issue at school or a dilemma with somebody, how do we draw that line to let them know that this isn't okay? Or when do we teach them to give grace to somebody? They're just they're over-scrutinized by themselves and by each other, by their peers. And they live in a constant state of, oh my goodness, what if I make somebody mad? So in that sense, we've had to learn to navigate that because, let's be honest, we could do something silly or stupid as a kid, and as long as your best friend didn't tell anybody, it was between the 2 of you. And that's not the case for them anymore. So that's been really different in general for us.
I mean, that really does cover it pretty well. I think also our kids are exposed to a lot more than we were as kids. I mean, our 11-year-old son does 3D printing. I was probably throwing rocks at stuff when I was 11 years old, right? And so our oldest, 16, she's a 3D animator and is doing work for people, and she's starting her own business in a couple months. And it's like things like that I didn't deal with when I was a kid. Those opportunities weren't there for me. Maybe for someone else, they were there. But I'm walking through that with them right now. Like I'm learning how to help my kids start businesses before I even start my own business, Like we're trying to navigate all those things with them. I think, though, what I value about the struggle that we've gone through, and I won't give our testimony really, but we did come from food stamps and stuff like welfare. We came from nothing. They bulldozed the first house we ever lived in. I shared that with you guys yesterday. So we clawed our way up, at least to where we're at now. And our kids watched her get her master's. They watched her accomplish that. My kids will watch me get my degree at the end of the summer for software. So they see me get my certifications. I think allowing them to see our struggle, my parents would never let me see their struggle. I didn't see their financial struggles. I didn't see their marital struggles. I didn't see any struggles because they wanted to paint this picture. And I'm proud of them. That's great. That is one way to do it. But there's so much value I see when our kids realize, hey, they think we're perfect. And it's great when they see us struggle because they go, oh, they're human too. How did mom do that? How did dad do that? I saw that. That was really tough, but they did it. I feel like that is a great way to instill in kids that you could do that too. Struggles happen. Life happens, but mom and dad are going to stick together. We're going to be loyal to each other even when we want to quit. We're going to go for it. We're going to try. But it does take both people to want to do that. If I only wanted that, I don't know that we would last. If she only was loyal and I wasn't, I don't know that it would last. But when both are, that's what makes it happen, of course, with God, right? And I have found a lot of value in that. And because at the beginning, I did beat myself up a little bit like, look, I did this all backwards, right? You're supposed to go to college, get a degree, be successful. And then you have kids. And then, there's the plan, right? The perfect plan. But then the Lord started correcting me. He's like, yeah, but your kids are going to grow by watching your success. And then they're going to be excited when they succeed because you're going to celebrate them too. So I won't go deeper than that, but I found that to be very valuable to help us get through how hard it is sometimes to go, yeah, but our kids are going to benefit from the struggle that they see too. So if I'm saying that, everybody understands,
I was just going to say, and it also helps us as people grow because we know they're watching us, so we have to choose how we're going to respond. And so it's very much like you feel like you're under a microscope all the time, a magnifying glass a little bit, like they're looking at you, so what are you going to do? So it naturally helps you with your growth too.
Oh, for clarity, they bulldozed the house after Chris and Amanda left.
Oh, it was so bad.
But there was no renovation for the next tenant.
Yeah, no.
Jason, in your family, dealing with a blended circumstances, and Heather kind of told me yesterday, explain the dreaded Christmas holidays.
Well, with a blended family, you got multiple sets of grandparents and parents, and each parent wants their time with their grandkids or with you, and so trying to juggle that because you have, like, we could go to Heather's parents' house with her dad and stepmom and spend time, but then Meemaw gets upset. Her real mom, Michelle, she gets upset, so you have to balance it. How do you put somebody first when you need to put your family first and their feelings? So it's really a juggling act. I think she probably has a little bit more to say on that, though.
I grew up in a split family, so spending Christmas Eve with one parent and Christmas morning with another parent and then switching the next year is normal to me. Doesn't make it any easier as parenting because you want your kid on Christmas morning. You don't want the other parent to have them on Christmas morning. And that's kind of where you have to be a little selfless, I guess, because they deserve that just as much as you do. And so we've had to learn a lot about that, about not making sure the other parent has as much time as we do. And same thing with with the grandparents or his family is just trying to navigate it. And if it's too much, then we refocus and we say, sorry, we're spending Christmas at home this year. And if you guys want to see us, this is where we'll be. And it took us a couple years to get there, but we did. And then we moved out of state. It wasn't an issue.
I think part of it is, we had to learn how to say no. by saying no, even though they're your grandparents or your parents, it's not disrespect. You're protecting yourself and your relationship between your wife and kids, because your family can be so demanding. And if you're not going to say no, they're going to run you over. And we faced that for probably the first 3.5 years being married, being just all over the place on a holiday. The holidays weren't enjoyable because there's so much stress going on to fulfill everybody else and their needs. And that's where we had to learn to say, no, like she said, we're staying home this year. You guys could come here. And being out of state is a huge help.
Well, I guess avoidance is still a solution to some questions. No, that's not really avoidance, that's survival.
Yeah.
Creating boundaries.
For our audience, some of you may say, well, I don't have kids, or I'm not going to have kids in that environment. But stop and think, am I going to be a spiritual mother or father or grandmother or grandfather to a young couple? It's probably a good time to collect some ammunition for questions we didn't have to address. I shared with both couples the first color movie I ever saw was King Kong, the original one. I'd never, it was probably another decade before I saw color TV. And they, other than watching golden oldies, they've never seen black and white. There's an era, there's what Chris and Amanda talked about having to deal with immediate access to anything through social media. Wasn't even a dream. Your best friend was going to keep your secret, or, they ended up with the recompense of their reward. Derek, Chris and Amanda, as you look on forward, because every parent has dreams for their children, where do you see your 4 children being in a decade from now?
Wow. A decade from now. Well, we definitely see Reagan in some type of successful animation. She is our highly functioning autistic daughter, and we're very guarded with that. She's more open with it now because we let that be her story to tell. But it makes her highly focused, and it also makes her very good at what she's highly focused on because she is into the details. And she has a goal. She has a dream. She has a vision, and she's going to make it happen. So we definitely see Reagan there. I can't see Reagan dating yet. That's just not in her zone of caring. If she were to see us doing this right now, she would roll her eyes and go, oh my God, I gotta go. I can't do this. Can attest to that. And then Kenzie is our brilliant overachiever. She's about to be a freshman and is involved in anything she can be at school, in a college program already. I see Kenzie as successful, but kind of a world traveler. I think she's going to want to experience the world because she has a deep appreciation for it. I mean, the kid's teaching herself French right now. Connor, I don't know. Connor is our only boy, but there's something very fatherly about Connor. I think all of our kids have big hearts, but Connor's it's so different. He's so warm and he's so deep and if he were to walk in here and you were to see him, you'd be like, yeah, he's just an 11-year-old boy. Yeah, he's got lots of energy. But when you get to know him or you see him with our youngest or with Jeremy and Elisa's kids, he's very attentive and he's very thoughtful. And he hates to disappoint. He really wants to do the right thing. And I'm spending a little more time on Connor, I guess, but he's come so far because he was identified as dyslexic at the end of first grade, and so he couldn't read, but he was smart enough to recognize he couldn't read and the other kids could. And he was so insecure. So we struggled through insecurity till this year. Few years. And I mean, acting out, just pushing boundaries, trying to find his worth somewhere, and just feeling like he wasn't good enough. And he's finally come to a place that he's found success, and he sees his worth, and he understands that. But it's just opened up a whole new side of him. I'm really excited to see him. Like, when I see him and think of his heart, it's fatherly. I don't know what he's going to do. I think he's going to dabble in a little bit of everything like Dad, as far as business or whatever. And Libby, I cannot tell you what she's going to do, but it's going to be bold and it's going to be loud, and you are going to know that she is the center of whatever's happening. She is a firecracker. She is the one who got teenage siblings because she was our surprise exclamation point. That's what we call her. And they have given her all the confidence in the world, and she wears it like a crown. So that's, I mean, is that about?
Yeah, I could speak a little bit to their kind of like the spirit that they carry, because this is a lot in the natural, but we are able to see some of the spiritual characteristics that they have. Reagan has revelatory gifts. She's called out well-known prophets and just read their mail, told them. So she has got the sweetest heart. Yes, she just loves people, a lot of compassion. Kinsey is very intuitive. I mean, she has insight and vision that she gets from the Lord about stuff. She just has this. Anyways, Connor, the only thing I'll say about Connor, because I'm really not released to say everything, but Connor has a message to the whole world. Whatever that is, it's been confirmed by all kinds of stuff, but he has a message for the world from the Holy Spirit. And I think that's going to be a part of his story, though. I feel like it's going to be a part of whatever he lives will be part of that message. And then Libby is so funny because I don't remember who I was talking to yesterday, but they asked me about Libby and our kids and their giftings and stuff. And they asked specifically about Libby, our 5-year-old. And I was like, I've never really thought or really seen any spiritual giftings yet. And then it hit me. She does this all the time. She'll walk up to people, even strangers. And if she hugs them, they will melt. They will be in just tears every time. They will ball up with tears. And she has something on her that she can meet somebody. If she gives you this sincere big hug that she does, just, it's over. Just, yeah, she was the dentist a couple weeks ago, gave the dentist a hug, and she just tears. Just in Walmart, a week before that, she hugged a lady at Walmart, tears. Just so whatever they're carrying is so beautiful to watch God do. I mean, we didn't give them the gifts, God did. And we are so proud that God would trust us with these little ones like this. So we take parenting very seriously because they're his kids. And like, we want to do the best that we possibly can. And hopefully our teenagers who think we're wrong all the time when they tell us will do better than us. They'll do even better. That's our hope. So we never paint a perfect picture of ourselves to our kids. We say, you're right, girls. We don't do it right all the time. I hope that you guys do it even better. It'd be wonderful. Step above us. That's what we want for our kids, to be greater than we are.
Yep. That's good. Where do you see your family?
I'll start with the youngest. He's the easiest. Jackson, he's very intuitive, and he likes to see how things work. So he's very much like I was at that age, taking things apart, breaking things apart, and saying, oh, well, walk it away. And as a parent, you're like, I just spent $20 on that, and you just crushed it, right? So working with him, he's only allowed to break McDonald's toys now. But seeing that in him, he has a really sensitive spirit, and I really believe that he will see the dead raise. I think the generation coming up has that ability. You know, Jackson and I will be playing, and he wants to play Army, and he shoots me, so I fall down like I'm dead, and he runs up. He says, come back to life in Jesus' name, so I jump up, you know, just trying to instill those things in him, knowing that you could call out to God, and he has that ability that he's starting to do. Natalie, she is very sensitive and takes everything really, really personal. So you have a different dynamic that you have to help her digest things and not eternalize it. So I see her being a helper. She loves to help and loves to be by the side of people. And then Annalise is our overachiever. She's a junior this coming up year, and she's been class president all 3 years. She wants to be a teacher, biology. So I see giftings on her that will propel her into places that we'll never go, because I didn't take AP classes, and she's taken AP classes her all high school career, but she's also one that she doesn't want to disappoint. So learning how to see that and bring that out of them and seeing them overcome is big. And then Hannah, I'll let you speak on that one.
Hannah's 19. I mean, that's pretty much all you can say on that. She's trying to figure out her own life. She loves to worship. She used to be on the youth group worship team. She sings. In our life, it's a little bit different. Obviously, our life revolves around the church and the Lord and all of that, but we have another aspect of another parent who is on the other side and does not believe in the Lord and does not. And so we have a lot of challenges with my girls when it comes to that, because we fight that on a daily. And so it's humbling to see that she's still, even if she's going to the illegal street races on Saturday nights or Friday nights like last night, she'll still get up and she'll worship the Lord, and she's learning. She's learning. Bless her heart. She's learning.
I think Hannah, she, you don't have favorites, but I call her my favorite oldest child because she's the oldest and I could get away with it. But having each kid having a dignified name that's separate, that they know is theirs, builds the encouragement in them to overcome. And like Hannah, I could see her worshiping and leading teams and doing things, and she's bright, business minded, absolutely. Natalie, she constantly, probably once or twice a month, will bring me a business idea, and I tell her, write it down. So they're very forethought thinking, and really see the prophetic, especially with Natalie. She recognizes when God moves. She dreams, and her dreams are very vivid, and they're always spot on. We were traveling, and I couldn't find my medication. Like, where did it go? Couldn't find it anywhere. And she's doing something, and I mean, we went through everything and looked inside out the suitcases. She found it sitting in the suitcase. She goes, this wasn't here before. I was looking. She goes, God placed it there. So she's beginning to recognize how God moves in her life, which is encouraging to see that hunger to listen to the Lord and encouraging them down their path.
Now I'm going to make you all four back up. Briefly, each one of you tell me about your childhood and your parents.
He's looking at you.
Oh, he's looking at me? Oh, it's me. Okay. I was not raised with a Christian background, no church whatsoever. I don't want to speak too much to it, except just to say that it was a rough childhood and it was challenging in a lot of ways. I had more non-examples than examples, but I learned so much from them. So I had a lot to learn and a lot to look forward to in raising my own kids because of my childhood. So.
Yeah. I was raised in the church, so totally different dynamic. Raised in the church, they weren't called mega churches back in the 80s, I don't think, and 90s, but we had like 10,000 people in our church. So I was very used to getting on stage, and my dad was a youth pastor, so I was around all the stuff. And so I gave my heart to the Lord when I was 7 years old, and I became an evangelist right off the bat. I've had dreams and visions my whole life, spoken with Jesus, seen angels, the whole bit. But having been raised in an environment that doesn't really celebrate those things other than salvation was difficult for me. And then I did experience a lot of rejection seeing, just being young, and when you realize your parents aren't perfect, it's kind of like, oh, and it's a realization, you got to deal with that because you always thought they were. So when I would see like my father, like being loved by all these kids that were my age, and he would have to spend all of his time with them, helping them, ministering to them, I began to see that and start feeling that, like, wait a second, where does your family fit in, And my two brothers, they felt it too. My mom, like, there was a season in his life where we were on the back burner, and he recognized that later, which is great. And we have an amazing relationship now. We don't have anything between us at all. But I did come up from a totally different background, so we both had we had the opportunity to learn so much from each other, and being able to listen to each other and the different backgrounds and everything is great because you can lean on each other for what you don't know, and I think that's part of becoming one. That's actually very difficult. That takes a lot of time. Yeah, and we discussed that the other day. We love our parents. Both of us love our parents. We can both say honestly that both sets of our parents did the best that they could, 100%. I mean, they loved us to the amount of love they understood, and it worked because we came out with an even greater understanding of love. And now we want to love our kids the best that we can. So we're very proud to have them. We wouldn't be here and be the people we are without our parents, despite their flaws, despite all that stuff. So, I mean, that's what we want to teach our kids too when they realize, which our teenagers have a little bit, when they realize we're not perfect, we want to let them know we know that too, and that's okay, Just don't yell it at me next time.
So my biological father and mom got divorced when I think I was 3 or 4. So Lee never was really in my life, and my mom got remarried when I turned 7. Well, shortly after. She met my stepfather, Jim, when I was 7. But there's a season in between that where she had a very abusive boyfriend. One of my earliest memories when we moved from California up to Washington, and one of my earliest memories is this guy picking me up and trying to throw me out of a 3rd-story window to kill me because he thought I was lying. So there was a lot of physical abuse on that end, and then like destroying my sisters with sexual abuse, and not realizing how to cope with that, I started acting out. And I got shipped to California to stay a little bit with my biological father, and I ended up coming home, and mom made the decision to leave the gentleman, and she met my stepdad, Jim. And my 7th birthday, I'll never forget, I just met him, and he took me to the circus. So I begin right there showing me the love of a father. He doesn't even know me, and he wants to take me. And I can think back to when I was 13, and I got kicked out of school. Instead of blowing up on me, he pulls around the corner and buys me ice cream, because he needed me to understand grace and love at that time, because I didn't. I was so hard from the trauma. But my parents were very, Jim, my stepdad, I call him my dad. He and my mom raised us up in the church. We served as a family every Saturday. We were in the low-income housing, bringing all the kids to church, but it was very unbalanced. It wasn't, your relationship with God, family, work, or anything. It was God, ministry, work, family. Family was always felt like, I look back now and I look like I see how we were kind of on the back burner because they were trying to do the things that they felt God called them to do, but not bringing balance into their lives with us. An example, one of the greatest things that you could do for your children is showing up to an event. I played baseball all from young age through high school, and my parents would only make one game a season. From the very first practice, I always had to rely on somebody else driving me or whatnot. And when they would come to that one game after not being at any games, that stress and anxiety to perform starts to kick in. And so that was really hard to battle through that. And, I look back now and I realize how important the balance is. And it's God, your wife, your family, and ministry is actually a little bit lower because your first ministry is your family. And that is something that my parents knew that, but they didn't, they operated the best of their knowledge, like Chris was saying. They did the best that they could, but then there's damage that comes from it. And we have the ability to say, okay, no, we're going to change this. We're not going to allow this to happen. So that's kind of on me.
I was raised in the church. A surprise. Even though my parents are split, my mom went to church. We did Daisies, Royal Rangers, and then my parents went to Overlake, and they were in the orchestra. And so I was at the church Saturdays, Sundays, Wednesdays. That being said, life with my dad and stepmom was perfect. You didn't know their financial issues. I was a kid. I was allowed to be a kid. Life with my mom wasn't perfect. Not going to go into that here, but probably all of the worst things that have ever happened to me, sexual abuse-wise, happened with my mom and her choosing men over me. So that's been hard to overcome. And there was a period of time, a long period of time, that I was mad at God. Probably from 18 to, when did we get married? 31? I was mad at God. But I looked at Jason and realized, if this man can go through all the things that he's been through in his life and still be going to church and still worshiping the Lord, why can't I? Why am I going to stay and be mad at him? And the second that clicked, our whole lives turned around. And not to say our lives are perfect. We've had a lot to go, but it's nice, comforting to know that the Lord is there to lean on when that anxiety hits with parenting or work or whatever, that he's there. And so it's a big reminder to us and our children and all of that he's there, even when you don't think he's there.
Well, let's shift a different direction. Almost the same sounding answer. Question. Who are the spiritual men and women that have spoken into your life, that have helped you both individually, as a couple, and to become the parents you are?
I would say starting with my mom for sure, because she's very motherly, just naturally. Like, when I was a kid, she would babysit kids because she liked to do that. It was her job too, but I remember whenever my dad got hurt, she took on 3 jobs to take care of us. She's just like the super mom. She's everybody's mom. She gives great advice. She loves to a fault sometimes. So she's been a great influence and a great example. My father, of course, watching him preach, he was an evangelist. He was like a magnet to kids. He imparted a lot of the spiritual giftings that I have. Incredible, biblical foundation that he built for me. And then when I moved on to adulthood, John Schmook, Alan's father, and then with John's passing, we've been truly grateful to have Alan in our lives. Has been a constant for years. I think, and there's others. There's been a lot of great people: Doug Rain, Roy Bryan, a lot of people that we know here. I could go on and on, but I think the constant has just been the love is what's meant more than anything. Just the support of encouragement. You can do this, and I see something great in you, and I believe in you, and the advice is great too. But without that, the advice kind of just is advice you could get in a book or online. But that relationship that these men have built with me is what made it so powerful in my life. It's what made the seed go deep into my heart. And so I hope I didn't leave people out. There's others, but just highlighting those few for me.
For me, he kind of stole my answer with his mom because she honestly taught me how to be a mother just from being with her, getting to know her. I was very fortunate that I got her, I was the only daughter-in-law for 10 years. And so I was a little spoiled. I was. But it was really good for me personally because I did get that one-on-one time to figure things out and learn some things I didn't know. And then I think of a lot of people. I mean, John and Alan, always. And then Betty and all of her advice. It's the best. She's always like, I'm really sorry, I'm just going to say it. And I'm like, I love that. Just say it, Betty. Just say it. So many people who we've encountered and run into, just little words here and there. But I think for me in particular, also, coming from not a very strong personal family, like how I grew up, it's also the family that you make, those friends that come into your circle and are there for you every day, whether it's silly text messages or just crying through life or just saying, this is really hard and I don't like it, and ugh, and we've created that. I have 4 women that I can think of right now that we're all around the same age, but we all come from different places. And we have so much to bring to each other because we're all in the trenches together. Our kids range from 21 all the way down to 1. But just having people in your corner to be there, and not always to give you advice, but just to say, yeah, I'm with you. That really did suck. Like, I'm really sorry that happened to you. So,
Really quick, not to take too much time, but we'll name some of them, like April and Matt, who some of you might know. We've known them for a long time. Of course, my brother Jeremy is sitting here, and Elise. And it's interesting with Jeremy because we weren't close growing up because we weren't really taught that aspect. No, we weren't. Definitely not. At least I wasn't. But as Jeremy got into adulthood and I began to press into God, that's when I was convicted that I needed to actually establish deeper relationships with my brothers. I had to work for that. And then when we both got on that same track, we actually got really close. He lives down the street from me now, so, that's great. So our kids play together and everything. But I just wanted to name a few people because it's important. We don't develop those relationships just selfishly, but also for our kids, because that creates a safety net for them. Because whenever I do fail as a father, which I have and I will, they know they can talk to Aunt Elise. Connor can go talk to Uncle Jeremy, and whoever else Matt and April, and just different ones that we're close to. We know that they're also safe places who have totally different lifestyles and opinions than we do. And they can make up for where we lack sometimes. So as a whole, I feel like that's really the body of Christ, is creating that for your whole family to find safe places to fall, when they don't want to talk to their parents about that kind of stuff, So I just wanted to throw that in there.
Who speaks into?
For growing up in church, there's always people in my life that would speak into me, but I had somebody that was a mentor, and I'd been having really prophetic dreams, and I began coming to him and telling him, and then, I don't know, let's pray about it. And then I come to him and he goes, oh, another one of your dreams. And it stifled me, right? It changed my perspective of what a mentor is and helping you out. But through that, Bob and Barbara Bignell have been the 2 biggest people that have spoken personally into my life and Heather's life and mentored us and shown us what grace is, and how to figure things out and not feel judged, but calling it as it is to build you up. So Bob and Barbara, and then, I think of my Uncle Rick. He's not the most spiritual man, but he's very practical. And so there's a mentorship there that I'm able to see and receive. And then like Heather's dad is he's an all-star. I look up to him, and he is very wise in the things of the Lord, and being able to have that family member to go to, or that mentor to go to, it helps unlocks those challenges that you're facing, whether they've gone through it or not. They know how to find the answer, and sometimes you just need to be led to an answer, and that's where the mentorship is so important with the mentors that I've had.
You took my answer. My dad. Hands down, my dad. He'll tell you, I may not always listen. Okay, I probably don't listen
You
Very-
think maybe your daughter might have got that from you?
Yeah. Maybe a little bit. Yeah, she's my twin. But even for her, she is still in Washington and she goes to my dad. I mean, my ex-husband goes to my dad. A little awkward right now, but you have to get over that. He is a grounded, brilliant man that, he's not a pastor. He worked at Sears for my whole childhood, and then as soon as I got out of high school, he worked at Boeing for the rest, at corporate level. But he, gets up in the morning and he does his devotions and he prays over us, and it's those little things that you don't see every day that really make a big difference in your life when you have questions on kids and stuff like that. So he's always there. He's always a sounding board. And like I said, I don't always listen right at that moment. But, 3 years later, I'm like, oh, yeah, my dad said that once. And it comes back around and it makes sense. So, and of course, Barbara now. But it's always been my dad for me. I'm an only child, so that's all there is.
Chris and Amanda, I'm going to ask you, you're approaching almost 20 years of marriage.
Yes.
You feel like you're old people.
Sometimes.
Excuse me.
that-
Say that again.
You're beginning to be called on to be spiritual mothers and fathers to people that are only 5 or 10 years younger than you, but are just now beginning the family development, having children and that. What advice what questions are most brought to you?
How are you still married? Honestly, how do you deal with this? This is driving me crazy. Those are the kind of questions we get more often than not. Because you have to learn how to live with somebody else and make decisions with someone else. And you're not always going to agree. And you have to compromise and figure out where you're gonna give and where they're gonna give. And so honestly, that's the biggest question is people, they ask us, how have you made it this long? And it's because we chose each other. And we didn't choose each other for a little while. We chose forever. So
That's good.
I'll say something that helps with us choosing each other. It is in our nature, it's who God's built us to be. We're loyal people, but our testimony is a big part of that too. God was definitely in the beginning of us dating and everything. We won't go the testimony, but that does offer gives us huge leverage against couples who are very unsure that they even married the right person to begin with, because those questions will come up later when you're struggling. And I'll tell you, I mean, we've had, hills and valleys and rough patches in our marriage where those questions arise at your low points, and you go, man, did I mess up? Did I? And then God's like, yeah, you remember that? You remember your testimony? You remember when I did that? You remember when this happened? You remember when that happened? You remember all these things? And that's a security that we have as a Christian couple, as a couple who loves God. We get that advantage, and those questions are immediately snuffed out because we go, yep. That all happened. That's real. That was all you. And so you're a lot more stable, I think, on that aspect of it. But then you still have to choose each other every day. So.
Well, as we wind up our hour, I would like to leave the audience with a concept we heard through each of this couple's. Life isn't easy, but with God, it is doable. Yes. And that, as Chris and Amanda just said, we choose to stick together. Mm-hmm. There's opportunities to jettison out of here regularly, and that you have to make a decision. And as long as God is in the middle of that decision, I was listening to a recording the other day, and they referred to that verse in the Old Testament about a 3-strand cord being stronger. And they said when we got married, it was me, my mate, and God. Those were the 3 cords. And life may fray one of the 2 cords, but it'll never fray the God side. So he'll always hold you together if you reach out to him. Anything in closing either one of you would like to share?
I had a thought and it skipped.
Well, I asked the other one, maybe it'll skip back.
This just keeps coming to mind. It kind of relates, but I'll never forget when Amanda was walking down the aisle. We had candles about 6 foot tall on all the aisles, and as she approached them, before she even passed them, they went out across the aisles, all of them. As soon as she approached one, they would go out. They would go out. They would go out. She got to the very last one. I'm standing up on the stage, right, watching this, and it's so surreal. Just God's all in it. You know, we had worship at our wedding and everything. It was all devoted to God. She gets to the very last row. All the candles go out, but one in the whole room. And I just think it's important to say that when you get married, you literally become one. Like, this is not just a natural thing that we worked for. There's a spiritual aspect of becoming one. And I'll never forget that one candle being lit when she got through that last aisle. So God's in it. He's in it. So you're not alone when you're struggling. God's there with you.
I remembered my thought. For me, so remember, my dad was at work, or he was doing something ministry-wise with children or something, so that one-on-one on how to be a man kind of missed. And that was really hard to learn, how to be a leader. Heather comes and she wants a leader. She wants a man to lead her. She's done leading. She had to do that. And I didn't know how. And she gave me grace to get through that and to learn and encourage. And something that was so pivotal for us, that was an overnight change, was she had come down to California to visit Grandpa. We were in the middle of remodeling our house, trying to get it on the market. And I was left with just a lot of stuff to do. And it wasn't even her fault. The power had gone out because we were having fires. So, she, the stuff that she needed to get done, she couldn't get done. And I was pissed, like just downright mad. And her dad asked me about it. If she leaves, what, and goes and leaves you a mess, what are you going to do? I said, I don't know, but I'm going to be mad. So she leaves, and I remembered something. We all have the ability to be the thermostat in the room. The response of my marriage coming forth from that day was going to determine how I responded when she got home. Was I going to be angry, or was I going to wrap my arms around her and love her? And the Lord really convicted me through this. I'm in the garage and I'm sanding stuff down, prepping, and that verse keeps popping in my mind. He who finds a wife finds a good thing and has favor from the Lord. Amen. But I'd heard that quoted so many times, and I've read through Proverbs, just scanned it and never paid attention. It's not, he'll get favor. He obtains favor. And when I begin to realize that some of the favor from the Lord that I receive, it's because I married her and I lead her, and my response will determine how God responds with her and with me. And that was really important, realizing that the favor that I thought I had was not me. It was coming through my wife. And that was a pivotal. She came home, and we had to talk about what happened, but it wasn't a blow up. It was, hey, this is what happened. I love you. I understand. And from that, it was a night and day change on how I treated Heather. There's times where I was very brash and just blunt, and it hurts feelings doing that. And I had to learn that. But that was probably one of the biggest keys.
Well, we're about to wrap up our time. I'd like to close us with a word of prayer. Father, I thank you that you said we could do all things through Christ who strengthens us. And Father, that's how we live life as an individual, how we live marriage as a couple, and how we raise children to be young men and young women of God. And we thank you for it in Jesus' name. Amen.